Hello, number ones, and welcome to Metatron's Academy. Why are there so many Italians in America? Let's find out. Ollie Richards, link in the description.
So we all know that the United States is full of Italians.
You know what I mean?
But why are there so many Italians in America? Did you know that America was named after an Italian? And as for words like Orioppo, I mean, is this Italian or what?
Forget about it.
I don't know what that means, so it must not be. Maybe of Italian origin.
So chances are that whatever you think about why there are so many Italians in America is likely to be a myth or a stereotype or some combination of the two. The real story is far more involved and far more interesting, and it began with the Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci, who gave
Amerigo Vespucci, sì.
Amerigo its name. He was the one who figured out that North and South America are separate continents and not part of Asia. But to be honest, this really had nothing to do with why so many Italians ended up in America. You'll hear about that in a minute. But see, before we get there, we've got to start with a different question.
Right.
Why leave Italy in the first place? After all, these days,
For me, beautiful girl.
most people are asking the question, how can I go to Italy? Well, extreme poverty is usually the biggest reason that people get driven out of their home countries. And sure enough, there were two major times in history when this did happen to the Italians. But it actually all started with things worse than poverty. Are you ready for this?
The immigrants.
Immigrants from Italy to America came in three waves. First, a smaller one. These early Italians in America were either exploring or running away. First, you've got the Waldensians. These are Protestants from Piedmont who were exiled from Italy for their beliefs after horrendous things happened to their people. These guys were thought to be witches and routinely burnt at the stake. Like I said, some things are worse than poverty. Then came the big
A lot of the burning at the stake or like persecution of the witches and whatnot, by the way, happened after the medieval period. Because oftentimes we associate it with the Middle Ages, but even though it did happen sometimes in the Middle Ages, the majority of witch burning happened after.
explorers who mapped huge areas of the continent, especially along the coast. You had Columbus, Caboto, Vespucci, da Verrazzano, Denizza.
I wonder why every single other surname is said the Italian way except for Colombo, Cristoforo Colombo, right?
Along the coast, you had Columbus, Caboto, Vespucci,
Vespucci,
da Verrazzano,
da Verrazzano. Yeah, so it's not like da Verrazzanas.
Denizza. Many other immigrants of that time were from northern Italy. You had musicians, craftsmen, war refugees, sailors who had abandoned ship, and other Italians who arrived via South America. Various kings also sent Italian missionaries to America. But even all of this was before the first big wave. I'll spare you the history lesson, but in a nutshell, in 1848, a massive political and social movement started in Italy called the Italian Unification. People suffered crippling poverty, especially peasants who lost their land, and America was a good destination to escape to.
I personally appreciate the history. In fact, if it were up to me, you could make the video twice as long and just dive into the history. I am actually triggered, though, and annoyed by the... That pisses me off. I don't know. Is it just me? I'm asking. I find it very distracting, loud. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. He's very successful, so I'm sure the people love it.
Especially since they were also recruiting Italian workers after the American Civil War. In only 34 years, more than 4 million Italians emigrated to America. Most arrived in the 20th century from southern Italy and Sicily, about 80 of them via the legendary Ellis Island. And this is what a typical passport used by Italian immigrants looked like. In the beginning, men used to come alone and send money back to their families, hoping one day to return to Italy. But
I still do that, although I don't necessarily hope one day to. As an Italian immigrant, I do send money to my dad every month, but do I hope to go back to Italy? No, not really. Well, visit, absolutely, and I want my son to grow up bilingual. Therefore, I do want him to consider Italy a second home. So when we're taking home, he can talk to his cousins, he can talk to family, and enjoy, the beautiful food and the wonderful weather and all that, particularly down in Sicily. But I don't hope to go back. That's just me. Of course, these are different situations. I love the USA personally. I like living here. It's really nice. Man, those sounds piss me off so much.
wasn't easy. Italy had huge problems like political and social unrest, heavy tax burdens, and 7 years military conscription, not to mention brutal epidemics like cholera. So, what would you do? That wave ended with World War I, and the next wave started with World War II. In the 1930s and 40s, there was that lovely man, Mussolini, and when he stripped Italian Jews of their civil liberties, 2,000 of them fled persecution and landed in America. Others then came after them, and overall there was a small revival of Italian immigrants crossing the Atlantic to the US after the war. And today there are more than 16 million people who claim Italian ancestry.
Yeah, I actually love running into them, I'll be honest with you. Every time we go to New York, which now we haven't in a while, but we used to go to New York periodically with the wife because you enjoyed, we liked it. And every time we go to Little Italy, sometimes we even stay very close to Little Italy because that's how much we like it. And every time I love running into the Italian, third generation Italians or second generation Italians. It's great. I love it. I freaking love it.
Most people initially settled in the New York metropolitan area, and the Little Italy neighborhood sprang up, which was about 30 city blocks on the lower east side of New York City. Yep. They also settled in Long Island, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, a whole bunch of places.
Gosh, the editor is going nuts with those. Goodness gracious, man.
I'll just show you here on the screen. But they basically went wherever working class jobs were available. And today, Americans of Italian ancestry are the nation's 5th largest ethnic group. But as a language learning channel, which is what this is, what most interests me is the whole new subculture that then was created from that immigration. But in order to understand what happened to the Italian language in America, you've got to understand the geography of that immigration that occurred. Now, remember we said that most immigrants came from the south of Italy, places like Sicily? Italians from these places did not speak standard Italian as you know it. They spoke a regional or local dialect, or a different language altogether, like Sicilian or
stavano in Louisiana.
Neapolitan.
È bello farci rilassare, chi ne gente popolare.
And many dialects of those as well, like Salentino or Materano. That was Materano. And
man, literally, elderly people are like the boss of language learning. It's like it's a final boss. Sorry, I got a phone call from my cousin in Naples. You can emigrate all you want. You can't get rid of them. They'll call you all the time.
Neapolitan dialect. And this is the type of language that Italians originally brought to America. And if you know some Italian, have a look at these words here and see if you can see a connection between the dialect and the standard language that you're familiar with.
Oh yeah, this is all Neapolitan. Pumarola is the tomatoes. Yes, Guagliona is a woman, is a girl, and Cheverin Marop. I'll see you later. Yeah, this is Neapolitan.
And don't worry if you couldn't see a connection. This is really nothing like the Italian that you're probably learning on your course.
Of course.
And if you've learned anything interesting in this video so far, go ahead and subscribe to the channel because I love making videos like this for people like you. Now imagine for a second what it must have been like for immigrant kids growing up in America. You've got this mixture of your parents' dialects, the dialects of other Italians nearby, and of course English. And then there are other immigrant groups living around them. You've got Irish, Jews, Germans, Poles. It's no wonder that Italian immigrants developed their own unique way of speaking. You'd find that syllables would get dropped, consonants would get swapped around,
in general, syllable dropping happens in regional varieties a lot anyways.
Vowels would be completely changed. What fascinates me is that today you have Italian descendants living in America using remnants of the old languages that are not even used anymore in Italy.
That happened to me. It happened. I actually talked to a Sicilian American, but the kid, I say child, it was like 14, it was, I guess, 15, waiter. And he used some words that my grandfather would use, which was so interesting because no 15-year-old Sicilian would use them today, even when they speak Sicilian, which is still a very strongly alive language in Sicily. I was brought up with both. We used them and switched between standard Italian and Sicilian all the time, and sometimes we mix them. But the thing is that no one would do that because it sounded like a grandfather. But in the body of a 15-year-old, it's so strange. It is so strange linguistically and culturally that things like this freeze. And this happened in the ancient world as well. There were some remnants of ancient Celtic language, customs, and religion even warfare, that remained in Britannia, for instance, but continental Celt had already stopped using for hundreds of years. And so these things remained frozen in time in an island, even with that small separation. Imagine 6,000 miles.
Italy, it's a little bit like how the Spanish of a country like Ecuador retains a lot of features of the 16th century Castilian Spanish that their invaders spoke at the time.
Makes sense.
And so it was with the Italian of Italy that developed in the post-war period and the huge linguistic melting pot that immigrants in America had. It's like two different worlds developing in parallel. Now, in a minute, I'm going to show you some hilarious examples of words that are born when Italian and English blend together. But you see, it's stories like this, or how people and language evolve, that I find so fascinating. And this is why I teach languages with story in the first place. It just makes everything so much more interesting. And it makes the language itself, the words and the grammar, easier to remember too. And I've actually written a short story that's designed to help you learn Italian, and you can download it completely free if you would like. You'll find a link in the description below. You're going to get this short story that I wrote, along with some helpful tips for how to learn Italian through stories, which is really useful if you're looking for a more natural way to learn Italian. But back to today's Italians in America, what you find is that they still carry many old customs and dialect words that their immigrant grandparents taught them.
The Italian-American slang word of the day is shimonade. Shimonade.
Shimuniti. I wouldn't say it's archaic though. Shimunito, we use it still in modern Italian, and it means like someone stupid. Shimunito, we still say it.
Although Italian and Sicilian were once widely spoken in the US, they really aren't so much anymore, although I'm sure there are many older folk keeping the fires burning there. See, during World War II, it was discouraged as unpatriotic, and the US government displayed charming signs.
In America, all right, I got confused because for a moment, because in Sicily, Sicilian is still very alive. It has evolved and it's changed, but it still exists very much, very widely spoken.
Read, don't speak the enemy's language. Funny, kind of reminds me of something.
This is a country where we speak English, not Spanish.
There was a lot of discrimination.
Well, right, but then again, so here's what I say. English is the mainly spoken language in America. It is correct. People who go to a country should learn the language of that country. That is correct. I agree with that. At least try. It's not easy, particularly if they're older, and people should be compassionate, right? If there is a foreigner and they are like in their 50s and they're trying to learn the language because they want to assimilate, they want to learn your culture, they respect your language, they respect your nation, then it's fine that you should be nice to them. I agree with, in a civic manner, you should encourage them, be like, hey, you're doing so well, Jose, thank you for learning my language, that's fine. But at the same time, there are people that come to America. I learned the language. I can speak English, no problem. So I don't have the accent, but I can speak it. And there are people who come to America and they don't care. They don't want to assimilate. They don't want to do that. And it's not like it should be mandated, sure. But at the same time, I respect immigrants who learn the language and at least try. I don't expect people to reach C2 level or C1 level, but at least to try. If I moved to Korea, I would try to learn the language. If I moved to Vietnam, I would try to learn the language, at least up to an intermediate level. And it's normal to say that. And for anyone who's going to say, English is not the official language of America, they are just being pedantic when it comes to the exact definition of what official means. But the reality is that the moment you think of an American, you think of someone who speaks English. And that's a fact. Okay, so let's not twist things in a way that it's weird.
Against Italians, and they were encouraged.
We speak English, not Spanish.
There was a lot of discrimination against Italians, and they were encouraged to speak more English. Many Italian language schools even closed down when teachers were interned. And then in 1917, English lessons began to be offered to Italian immigrants, because of course they were also hyper aware that they needed to communicate to get their jobs and keep their jobs. And so over time, English just took over, and records show that fluency in Italian has declined dramatically in the US in the past 25 years. Right. But there was a time when journalists coming to America were astonished at the language that they heard. They said it wasn't quite Italian, it wasn't quite dialect, and it wasn't exactly English.
What's the matter you? Hey, got no respect. What do you think you do? Why you look so sad? It's not so bad. It's a nicer place. Shut up in your face.
So it's like the foundation was English, but words were pronounced the Italian way with rounded vowels at the end, like grosseria, meaning grocery, contrattore for contractor, or fruttistenne, meaning fruit stand.
I mean, that's kind of cool, though.
The written language was also getting fascinating. For example, you'd read about things like tailors of cotti instead of coat tailors. This was Americans trying
I wouldn't understand cotti as coat, though. I personally wouldn't understand it. That's crazy.
to write in a way that immigrants would understand. So how much of the growing language was anglicized Italian and how much was a distortion of English? Well,
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Forget about it.
If you're watching this and you are Italian American yourself, I'm really curious, have you been back to
It's going to be my son.
Italy? How well could you communicate with the locals? I'd love to hear about your experience in the comments.
That is actually a very nice one. So I'm going to redirect the same invitation to my subscribers. If you're an Italian American and you had a chance to go back to Italy, how easily could you communicate based on the language that you have picked up with your family? Thank you for watching. Check out this video. Have a good one. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.